Yep, that works. Yep. Oh. Hello there.
Hello, hello. For those of you who haven't heard our voices before, I'm Squid.
Yeah, I'm Ferry.
And also the voice overlay is on the top left, so yeah, you probably can.
Oh, I forgot. Amazing.
Yep, it's working.
That's absolutely brilliant. I feel like
I
Did you
see
exclude
that
yourself?
I feel like the mute button has been blocked. Right, hello everyone.
Rover is currently fixing it.
This is a classic start to a stream, hey? Right.
I mean, yeah, you don't get much better than this.
That's too big.
Well, at least you have people for feedback and not just
Oh yeah,
like
fantastic.
talking to yourself
It would have
and
been absolutely
Yeah,
wonderful.
nobody
if
tells you that you're
we'd
muted or
gone-
something.
It'd been wonderful if we'd gone too long without that. Right, there we go. Thank you for putting that out in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to repeat what I said because I'm an idiot. Today we're going to be going over the changes in the mod since the 1.12 to 1.19. Things that you might expect to be the same, things you might expect to be different. Might be a little bit of technical details for those who may be interested. And we're going to be answering some of the Q&A questions that have been submitted to us through the week. So I guess, shall we just jump into the game, the server, and see what we can show off at the moment?
Yeah, do it.
Shall we have tour guide Agner show us around?
Oh, do I? Oh.
You can show us around, yeah. Game
I
should now
mean,
be on
you're the
screen.
one who did what everyone wants, so I feel like you get the option to show everyone around.
Yeah, exactly. You're the conduit, man.
Should we start with that or like?
We can start with conduits. I think that's what most people are probably excited
Just show off.
for.
Just show off. That's all we're kicking off with.
Okay. We start with a mechanism energy cube because conduits currently only connect to energy capabilities, but they work for all for the capabilities implemented. So yeah, if we have item conduits here, configure them to extract and insert. They usually would disconnect, but that's also not coded in yet because reasons. No, it's because time, but yeah. Insert chest, place chest, and Rover, if you will look into a chest or something, items should travel.
Yep. I'll turn myself down a bit because I think people are saying it a bit louder. Is that better, chat? But yeah, that's very cool. I've not seen these working in game yet, so this is really cool.
And they move back once the configuration.
The GUI works as well. Plus, I checked.
I'll give it like -8. That should be alright. No, that's really cool.
Yeah, and you got to put a frog in it or something to prove that it's 119, guys. I feel like we haven't.
Frog. Here we are. Pick some frogs.
There we go.
Oh. Okay,
Wait,
so
no, we are
we'll
not
go
on
into
190. Frogs don't exist.
Oh my
What happened
gosh,
to the
this is
frogs?
right.
Why did you kill them?
They want louder, Rover.
Oh,
That's
they
what
want
they
louder,
want.
not quieter, right?
They want more of
Okay.
your voice.
Right.
Maland, you know,
turn that up. Filters. Gain. Give it maybe 1.5. Is this better, guys? This will be uploaded as a VOD to YouTube.
Yeah. It might get edited down so you don't get to see the part where Agnor murdered a bunch of frogs, which is for the best.
We'll put them back. There we go. Still quite a bit better. I'll bump it by a bit more. let's just go for 2.5. Is that better for you guys then? No, that was only 2.5. There we go. Right, that should be improved. Okay, do you want a machine or something? There we go. This
So,
is not.
yeah.
Oh, I'll let you take this then.
You want me to take it? Yeah. So
Yep.
the original team currently, none of us are from the original team. So the original team was Crazy Pants, basically. From there, Tederac and Henry came on board, then myself for 1.12. And I guess the versions before it, but no one remembers those versions of Minecraft. And then after that, the original team essentially all disappeared. And then Rover came along first, started fixing things up, and now Ferry and Agnor as well. So it's basically a fresh team at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh well. I guess maybe a good thing to talk about now would be the changes to the early game, because that's gonna be the thing people are going to first see.
Yes. Well, do you want to go over that?
Yeah, I can go over that. So the way we've split Ender.io and removed the simple machine tier, because we kind of felt that it was slightly annoying and you'd use it to get into the mod and then you'd never touch the machines again. So we've reduced that down to a single primitive block that you'll start with, which would be the primitive alloy smelter, which does exactly the same as your alloy smelter, except it burns coal. So you can get your basic alloys that you need to make your full machines in the game. It basically it skips the simple machine step, meaning you can get to the content faster. Because otherwise we find you spend a lot of time building the machines and then immediately getting rid of them. And then alongside that, Grains of Infinity have been tweaked. They are still acquired by burning bedrock if you're so inclined, but to adapt to the new world height, because bedrock is a little bit annoying to get to now, you will be able to put the some deep slate and some flint into a grindstone. Is that what it's called? The grinding wheel, the grindstone. So the grindstone you will be able
You're
to
still
create
too quiet,
from.
apparently,
I put it
Rover.
up by like so many decibels. This is
We
wild.
can't rescue him. He just refuses to talk loudly. That's all there is to it.
Alright, this is okay. We'll double the thing again, and then some. Is this better?
Just start
Is
yelling
this
into your mic.
I was gonna start shouting.
Scream into the void.
Right, put that to 9 decibels. Is this now better for you guys? OBS just doesn't seem to like my microphone. Like, I don't understand. Is it using the wrong microphone?
Maybe.
It sounds fine now.
Microphone should be that speaker. Yeah, no, that should be fine.
I think it's fine now.
Okay, perfect. Right, cool. So, to recap, in case it was too quiet, we've got a primitive alloy smelter that runs on coal now. Why did you kill the frogs?
I'm sorry. I had to.
I'm going to drop a warden in here in a minute.
So no, the primitive smelter, that will take coal, so you can make your alloys really slowly, but it gets rid of all the annoying simple machines in the early game. And then your Grains of Infinity can still get gotten by burning bedrock, but now you can grind your deep slate or cobbled deep slate with some flint and a grindstone to get your Grains of Infinity. Which means you can go straight up pretty much into your into the normal tier of machines pretty straightforwardly.
Yeah, so normal tier of machines will be nerfed slightly as well to go with that, back down to like their 1.7 sort of tier rather than the 1.12 tier that we had. Because in 1.12, we buffed the early game machines from being roughly 40 RF per tick, like most machines, to 60. And that change was to facilitate the fact that they were a lot harder to get now. So they're kind of getting nerfed back down to their initial point, which means that you get a good machine that works for you from the early game through to the late game, instead of having to rebuild all of your machines every time that you get through the first part of the game.
Yeah. And then
They also don't leak power.
yeah, we got rid of power leaking. In addition to
It's
that,
a cool concept, but I just don't think it fits very well in the base of what we're doing for Ender.
honestly, I didn't notice that from all my times playing Ender.io in survival. I never really took notice of the power leaks
Oh my gosh, I don't know
But I
how.
personally used to play it with other mods generating power for me, so that
Ah.
could be why I didn't notice it.
One of them, I see.
Yeah, shoot me. Right. And then the other thing that will be noticed is we have gotten rid of the enhanced machine tiers. Instead, we're going for I think it's a more upgrade-based system, if you will. So there's a heavier
Yeah.
emphasis on your capacitors and maybe some in-world upgrade stuff that we're planning, but we don't really have much concrete on that yet.
No.
But instead of
So I
having
think
more machines, you'll upgrade the existing ones.
yeah, for the same reason as the simple machines, right? Like they were cool, but at the same time, we like having to replace your entire machine line simply to get it to go faster is a bit superfluous when you already have capacitors and you could just build 2 of them and it takes up the same number of blocks. So the goal would be, if we do anything along those lines, because I mean the half extra block height looks really cool, to make it so it's a little bit more focused around just like interactions and new systems rather than just, you know, a second block.
That's I guess that's the main changes that we'll be seeing. Alongside the fact that I think we're bucketing some of the machines into different tiers now, so they'll follow different traits found around Minecraft. So we're taking inspiration, obviously lore-wise, from the Void or the Infinity kind of stuff that we had already. We do have plans to play with things like Skulk as well. So machines will fit into a certain bucket and an idea, and will follow kind of properties associated with that idea rather than just being a machine.
Yeah, so that will be very exciting. I wanted to do that on 1.12, but we never really got the opportunity to do that yet. So it's exciting to finally get to see that.
Yeah. And I've had a question about treasure capacitors. Loot capacitors are still going to be around. We do have some plans to make them slightly more strategic. So with this same idea of machine tiers, we have the idea of having different loot capacitors better for certain categories of machine. So say a machine follows the Skulk behaviors, then you can go to the Deep Dark and get some capacitors that work better in Skulk machines. Or if you've got a Nether-based machine, I don't really know what the tier is going to be called for that yet, you can go to the Nether Fortresses and find the irrelevant part there. So it adds a bit more strategy, so you can, if you've got a specific machine you're wanting to upgrade, you know exactly where to go to find the loot capacitor that will work for you. And I guess along the same note, we are doing away with the naming of the capacitors also, so you'll be able to hover over it and see exactly what values you have on a capacitor from the get-go.
Yeah. And all of this really is to facilitate actually being able to use them without having to have the constant questions around how do I find out what my capacitor does and whether or not it's useful. There's always been questions about that, and I've loved the nature of how they work, but the issue has always just been it's difficult to really understand how to actually make use of that. And yes, this is for any Ender area related questions. We do have a backlog we'll go through, but we're not going to stop you if you have more questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
Okay,
yet,
here
at
we go.
least.
That capacitor sucks, first and foremost. Oh, actually, this is going to be the server problem, isn't it, Agner? These aren't actually going to synchronize their properties. Okay, we'll show that in a bit. But you can see from that brief thing, there'll be tooltips for information.
Yeah,
Okay,
and also about capacitors, we're simplifying them a bit so you don't have like 500 different traits you can have for going to. Again, within their type, like the scope ones are going to have like scope related traits, but it's not like it's going to be 500 different traits for every machine. We're going to simplify that a bit as well.
Yeah, so I will go over more of the technical details probably toward the end of the stream for those who are less interested. What did you do?
I can't believe you would do this.
So I'll dive maybe into a bit of the code just to explain how the capacitors work versus 1.12, but because that's not up everyone's street, we'll get through the Q&A and stuff first, and then we'll go into more in-depth details. Yeah,
cool. I think the only other thing we have on this really is talking about conduits. Agnor, you've been hard at work at conduits.
Yeah, I was. We wasted a bit too much time, in my opinion, on that, and we're still not nearly done.
Yeah. So conduits, I am going to go a little bit into the details of it, but essentially they run using a graph database now, well, graph network, essentially meaning that we only care about the endpoints. It should be pretty efficient. It should also allow things like you break two conduits, like a one line of conduits into two separate lines, and that doesn't cost anything more than just breaking any other part of the conduit line would, because it doesn't have to rebuild the entire conduit network to be able to do stuff. That is a technical improvement for sure, but it's also the kind of technical improvement that means NRI conduits get to be substantially more
That's
speedy.
a cool bug.
That's a fun bug. Oh my gosh, yes.
I
we love
don't
that.
know why that happens. I've tested that out. I mean, I haven't tested the system with specifically conduits.
We made a conduit staircase, look.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay.
Why does that happen?
New staircase meta confirmed.
Yeah, I've had a question from the chat, just to catch up on real quick. Are any of the machines emissive? We love glow-in-the-dark stuff. Currently, no. We're using the 1.12 textures and scaling them slightly. But I think conduits could look really cool, but that's more of a quality of life thing that we take suggestions for at the end of the the alpha cycle, I guess.
Yeah. So I think if you have some ideas for which ones would be good to have emissive textures, I think like the XP vacuum and stuff would be good with emissive as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Have we got other questions?
There is one more I've been handed. Are there quarries in Ender.io? I actually don't think there is, but
not currently. It's not that we never would have one. We just never got around to even implementing all the things we wanted to implement on 1.12.
Oh, is it the conduit sorted that I wrote? That might be it. I've changed the sorting algorithm.
Oh, you made the sorting algorithm different. That might be it, yeah. And a question about GUI container base for 1.12. I have never written code for 1.12 really, so I couldn't tell you, I'm afraid.
And I do not remember right now, so I would have to come back to that later.
Oh yeah, and the fracking branch, I did discuss that with Henry back at the start. That would definitely be a cool idea to explore in the future as well. But I think the quarry and stuff like that, because that was a feature that hadn't made it yet, that will be put to the back of the queue. Because we're going to try and get to basically 1.12 feature parity in Spirit before we go ahead and add new things.
Yeah, exactly. Other thing I'll list, a few other things with conduits. They're all capability based now, which means that it should be easy as long as a mod has a capability to implement it and put it on there. The conduits, I think, could probably use a bit of new texture love. My old textures are not that great, so as a question that I'm sure will come up later in terms of what could non-coders do, they can offer us textures, because, I mean, I don't think any of us here would claim to be artists.
Absolutely not. I mean, you've seen what I've tried, at least I know Agro and Ferry have.
Yeah, so there's a lot of improvements to conduits overall. I'm very excited to see them work in-game, just in terms of like testing them at scale. But yeah, that's the big one. Conduits are in fact back.
Yes. I'm going to check our list of things to talk about. Oh, material changes. That's a good one.
Oh yeah.
So copper being a material, we have gone ahead and swapped some of the alloys to use it. I'm going to have to go and check my reference for what alloys are what now. So copper has been put into a few of the alloys, and I think a couple of the alloys have actually been renamed for it.
Yeah.
So we have copper alloy now, which is iron and silicon. I guess that was electrical alloy before.
Yeah.
Basically, anywhere that
was
electricity was used, we've moved it to copper in most places. Just because it makes more sense, and it adds a bit more resource variety as well, so it means you're not completely draining your iron reserves to build things in the mod. I think that's quite nice. So you'll find copper being used substantially more across the mod. Can't exactly tell you where, because it's kind of difficult for us to tell what we've changed and what we haven't from the current view. Like, we'd have, I guess we'll put out a wiki or something when we're closer to the time. Electrical steel, I think, is still here. It was replaced with I think it's replaced with conductive alloy, which is
conductive alloys always existed.
Iron. Okay, maybe it's the copper alloy then.
It's the copper alloy that replaces it. Yeah.
You're going to do a full release at some point or finishing some part of the mod after the other. Okay, so we have dropped the module system from 1.12 because it was leaning itself towards being incredibly difficult for us to maintain. Just the tooling behind it is not really great when it comes to having multiple projects running side by side. And it meant that we were spending a lot more time loading up the project each time than we were actually developing. So in the background, we do have that same split in terms of like our code, but when we release, it will just be one mod that you could download and have all of Ender.io in. I think recent changes in Forge mean we could probably do the split again in the future, but that would be more of a thing that people will ask us for. We're not going to do that unless there's an ask or a need for it anymore. Because personally, I don't know many people who use the mod split. So yeah, as far as current plans are, there'll be a single mod to download under Ender.io when it's done.
Yeah, and about we might also like Armory, for example, could be a separate mod entirely, maybe. So that's also like an idea. Instead of the full-on modularity we had, make it a little bit less modular, but still a couple of separate mods.
Yeah, so like Mechanism does with its tools and its generators and the additions, like the mobs and stuff, we could have a similar split system to that, but not quite as deep as the Ender.io one. Because what a lot of people would complain about is, hey, I downloaded Ender.io conduits, but I don't have any of the crafting recipes because I needed to add machines. So we're trying to avoid that kind of problem where you add the mod, but you don't realize that it's not got everything in it.
Yeah, and add-ons like Energy, for example, should not be in the main mod, so we will have some separation, but it will be not a module system.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It is also worth noting that in terms of release schedule, we'll come back to a bit of what it looks like to actually release Ender.io, but we're not planning on having all of Ender.io in for the first publicly available releases. And I mean, that answers the other half of the question. We're not going to finish inventory panel before we release, for example. But on a more serious note, there are other pieces of the puzzle that will likely not be in the first few alphas or betas.
Yeah. I've had somebody say that mod packs that use things like creating above and beyond may want split Ender.io parts. If they did want some kind of split in Ender.io, then that would be the kind of thing that we do. Like we'd hope for an issue request or something. That way we can try and find what the use case is and try and find a good way forward for modularizing, because the old system really did leave a lot to be desired in terms of player communication.
Yeah.
Because it's great if we add all these different separate ones, but the more we add, the more confusion it generates. So we'd kind of need to have an exact reason as to what it is and why. Or possibly even just authorize them to add a custom build in their mod pack rather than putting it on CurseForge to confuse people.
Yeah. And usually what happens is someone goes, I want conduits, but not the rest of your hard work, which is not super fun.
No.
I'm kind of the opinion that what makes conduits work so well is the fact that they actually have a mod that goes with them that allows you to progress through. And if you're going to change that up for a pack to like completely change that up, you're usually already competent enough to be able to go around disabling recipes. So I think taking queries from mod pack makers is totally reasonable, but with like CraftTweaker and Cube.js, you can achieve the equivalence of removing every single Ender.io recipe from the game and replacing it with your own, and you're likely already doing.
Especially with the shift away from XML files in the mod as well. Everything is controlled with Minecraft standards.
Yes.
So we no longer have.
So we're not doing anything.
Yes, so data packs can work with Ender.io too.
Yes. I forgot about the XML recipes, but yeah, that's definitely worth bringing up.
They dragged up the wall.
Yeah. So, do we want to go through some Q&A questions or jump into the criteria for first alpha?
I feel like the alpha release criteria is probably going to be up on people's priority list, so I guess we can go over that first and then we can get into the nitty-gritty.
Let's do that.
Okay, so I guess in terms of our criteria for an early release, we've got a list of features, list of things that we expect to be in the mod and working to a good enough standard in order to hand it over to players to start testing. Because we don't want to give you guys too little to test, but we also don't want to present you guys with a buggy mess with everything in it, but it doesn't work. So we're trying to find a good balance between content and functionality where your guys are going to be able to give us good feedback, where we'll also be able to provide you with a mod that you can test. So, in terms of our list of things that we're looking for, the early game for Ender.io needs to be in and working for recipes for everything, so you can access stuff from survival. That's currently what we're working on. We've done, like you've seen, the primitive alloy smelter, the grinding of infinity grains, things like that. That's in, but we still need to add things like the machine recipes, frames, update everything for our new ideas. And alongside that, obviously the machines have to be implemented and their recipes must work and be added as well. So that's quite a bit of work, but we're getting there on that front. We also have to double check our materials and the items that we add to ensure that they're still used. If anything's been
There are a
left that
bunch
isn't
of loot
touched,
purging.
yeah, there's a lot of items that just look like old craft now from 1.12. So we are working on sifting through, so there's less basically less microcrafting in a way. So we're not using stuff for the sake
Yeah.
of using.
1.12 was, as a Minecraft version, particularly notorious for its microcrafting.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted every mod to be partially Greg-Tech. And
Yeah.
I think you can see by Thermal and other mods that have updated since then that the trend is like basically 2 to 3 steps until you have the item that you want.
Yeah.
And Ender.io is still far from that point. Like, I mean, even looking through some of the stuff you've seen on stream so far, you'll probably spot like dozens of random items that just aren't relevant unless you go to a very specific part of the mod.
Yeah.
The dyes for machine frames.
Yeah, which is something we were just discussing today. We're revisiting the machine frames at the moment, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
That's part of our trying to get there for an alpha release, so we can try and get this stuff into people's hands. Along a similar vein, we're checking if there are new materials we can use from vanilla rather than like our own, because it is always nice when we can take inspiration from the vanilla game and not give everyone information overload with brand new items, but we can find creative uses for existing things. So take the sculk concept, for example. We want to use mechanics from the Deep Dark and the new sculk blocks in our machines to try and tie in with Minecraft to make it kind of like, it feels like more of an extension to the game as opposed to a new game, if you will. Which I think is kind of important, because I think I do like when, like, take Create, for example. They've done a brilliant job of feeling like if Mojang did it, that's how it would look. So I think it's important to have a great balance where you work a lot with the concepts of your mod, where you have these machines, you have all these new processes and things, but we still stay true to the game. I think everyone will agree with me on that front, I think.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, Ender.io has always been good at not adding random resources in terms of, like, modded ores and stuff like that, and really trying to lean into the mob front. So I think there's going to be some conversations around that.
Yeah.
On the netherite and debris front, I imagine Endsteel will end up with it. But beyond that, I'm not sure. The problem with netherite is that it fundamentally has not been adopted widely across the community as a gating mechanism, which means it's kind of difficult for us to be like, our late game will use netherite, whilst other people are like just ignoring it. Like Thermal's, drill doesn't use it. You can get refined obsidian without leaving the overworld. So there's a few too many avenues for getting really broken stuff to allow netherite to actually block what we would consider broken. So I think Endsteel is likely the only one that's really going to fit in that category.
Yeah. And I feel like if we were to play with netherite, it would probably come in under the category of our tools. And I feel like it would probably be nicer on a player perspective to possibly alloy Endsteel with netherite or something, because otherwise needing netherite for everything that uses Endsteel is incredibly expensive and it's going to put people off of that tier of resource. Because netherite, obviously, in terms of survival gameplay, unless you've got something like a quarry or Ender.io digital miners and stuff, is incredibly grindy, and we have to account for people who aren't going to use supplementary mods. So if we say, hey, you're going to need a bar of netherite for everything here, somebody's going to look at that and go, no thank you.
Explosions. Just bomb your way through the nether. Netherite is a genuinely hard resource to get, and I think that's good, but it does also mean that we have to be careful with how we use it. That being said, as a dark steel upgrade, sure. Like it's a really good one-off sort of material. So for armor, for tools, etc. Like I could see a lot of benefits for it. But yeah, you're totally right. We can't use
Maybe-
custom console.
Maybe it could be used as an upgrade, like to upgrade the mining level or something.
Yeah, exactly. It can be. We definitely want to find a use for these kind of things, but it's doing so in a manner that's careful as well. Because obviously, with the addition of a new tool tier, we now need to decide where dark steel and end steel tools sit on the scale again. Do they stay behind netherite and encourage people to reap the additional benefits of the upgrade system, or do we try and make them a step beyond netherite? So we've still not come really to conclusion on that front.
Yeah. So these will be things like if you have some ideas and thoughts, share them. Definitely share them in the Discord though. I'm not going to remember everything that you
Yeah.
say in chat. No offense intended. But like, yeah, I think there's a lot of things to discuss and think about in that space. Dark steel unlikely to change. I think it's iconic, and I think it's also like a very reasonable mid-game diamond tier sort of alloy.
Yeah.
It'll be the end steel and like that sort of the end of the game's tiers where it's like, how can we make better use of netherite?
Yeah. So, in response to the smithing table question, we have already changed away from having the dark steel anvil to using the smithing table for applying upgrades. So it's more than possible that we could just end up doing something with netherite in there.
Yep, absolutely. Before we jump into more questions, to finish off the alpha release pieces, their conduits at this point are planned to be in the first alpha release, and that's mostly because of all the things to test in Ender.io. Conduits are like pretty high up there. Like they are completely rewritten. There's a lot of things to check. So item fluid and energy conduits and redstone will need testing. Though I imagine redstone might come later down the line, but item fluid and energy at the very start will be the ones that need testing.
They're also pretty important from the actual mod flow because you can't really power your machine without having a cable to put the power in and things like that. So
yeah,
it's quite fundamental without you installing another mod.
Now, they weren't going to be part of it, but Agnor got a bee in his bonnet and just made conduits a thing. So they are.
I tell you, Agner, while we're going over this stuff, would you like to try and demo the painted blocks that you also worked on?
Oh, yeah.
Because we kind of slipped past them because we haven't got the machine in for those yet.
Yeah. Robot turned to the left, to the wall. Spruce fence, they kind of look differently.
Oh,
those
right, yeah.
painted blocks.
Oh, yeah, there's a painted
Oh, those are painted blocks, yeah.
Except the copper.
Yeah.
And you can turn them to any texture you want. Currently with commands, but yeah, that's gonna change.
We're bringing the painting.
The painting machine is not in there. The painted blocks are. Paint set value. What do we want to look at like? Minecraft copper block. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Raw copper block. Stairs. Fences.
Yeah.
So functionality is there. We just need to bring in the machine that lets you actually do that in survival.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
It's
Agnar
really,
spent
really
a bunch
fun.
of time on this. It should also. Does it work with connected textures? I can't remember if we did.
We
No,
don't have
connected
connected textures yet.
Okay.
CTM is not on 1.19.2 and XY World isn't up. It doesn't provide an API yet. So, can't do that right now.
Yeah,
That's totally fine.
Once either of those come up, then we'll investigate ways of supporting them.
Going through a few questions from the chat before we finish off the final parts. Where'd it go? That was what about the facades? What channel we should be post feedback? Suggestions or general will work. Currently, there is plenty of room for that. What generators are there in Ender.io? Currently none. We will have the 4 that you're used to from 1.12. So Sterling, Lava, Combustion, and Solar. There are some comps. Oh, as well as the Zombie generator and Ender generator. My personal favorites. There will probably be more over time, but just if you have suggestions for generators, feel free to send them through. If Tyler, would you be able to send a link to the Discord by any chance?
Yeah, I'm getting it right.
That's perfect.
Gas conduits.
That's a
want
very
to have
interesting
first-party
topic,
gas
yeah.
conduit. Like, we don't need this to be an add-on mod. I mean, like, it'll be an add-on mod, but it will be supported by the Ender.io team, or well,
I
it's
will
with the
take
help
an
of
aside
Pup.
on the add-ons in a moment.
We don't
Sorry?
even need to have it as an add-on mod. We can just
Yeah.
like have them in the base game, and if mechanism is there, we can just have the conduits present.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
there'll no longer
so-
be any chasing around like apply the energistic Ender.io or Tinker's Ender.io.
yeah, we
It'll
don't-
all be in the base mod as well.
That's the plan, to have like not a dozen of Ender.io conduits for combat mods. That's just not gonna happen, I hope.
We'll avoid it where we like technically can. If there's a
Yeah.
reason that we can't, then we'll have to obviously do a separate mod, but we'll try in the best of our ability to avoid it.
For context, we didn't put mechanism conduits and others in the base mod originally on account of just not trying to overload the user with a bunch of random nonsense, and so that it was easier to not have those sorts of simplicities if you wanted to not have them. It turns out most of the time people did want those. And it also turns out that it is kind of hard to implement conduits in such a way that you can just easily add another conduit to it as an add-on mod. So it's almost actually easier just to have it in the main repo for both the end user and for us. So yeah, gas conduits will definitely make a return though.
But the current API for conduits is set up so you should be able to create your own conduits without a problem. That's also to say that, like, if you want to create conduits, you can, but we can also make it if we want to.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a baseline set that you'll see again, the ones we're used to, which will be the gas conduits, applied energistics conduits, and RS conduits.
Yeah.
There might be more after that, but those are like the three key add-on ones.
Yeah. I do believe
I did suggest the stress unit conduit. I did suggest it. I think we came to the conclusion that
it's unfaithful.
Create would prefer if we didn't.
Yeah.
And I would prefer if we didn't. Like, I've also said that I will add some lines of code that if I have them in the inventory, I just die if we are going to add them. But
my joke was that they should spin.
Yeah, no, that's not happening.
The only thing that I would think, yeah, let's add create conduits because they could look really, really cool.
Yeah.
But
it would be fun to have your one part of your conduit model spinning at the same time. But yes, angry create noises indeed.
Yes.
The other reason we didn't do gas conduits in the base mod originally, and it was an add-on mod but maintained by Pup, is we wanted to use gases in Ender.io. And we were going to add our own kinds of gases. The new plan is if we do that, they just are 100% compatible with mechanism anyway. So that should be a non-issue.
Yeah. So I believe we've got some preliminary intentions to bring some kind of gas functionality into Ender.io in the future. So it wouldn't be out of place if we brought in gas support in the main mod anyway.
Yeah. It is also worth noting that mech has like 4 kinds of gases, and there's just a bunch of technical stuff behind how that works. So when we get there, we can judge how it actually looks in terms of implementing. But Pup, the mechanism dev, has been more than happy to help out with all of that. So
yeah,
I would not stress about whether or not you'll be able to move gases with conduits.
Yeah, we'll definitely sort that out closer to the time. Probably not as part of the alphas, however. That'll probably be a post-beta kind of deal.
Oh, hey, Tech is here. Welcome.
Tech, you also said that AE conduits will be hell, and yeah. So I'm looking forward to them.
Yeah, I'm excited for them because last time I only had access to Raul from the RS team when I implemented the add-on conduits. So it'll be good to have access to the AE team as well because we did not last time, and that meant one got a lot more love than the other team.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the last part of the alpha release criteria, we have some bonus stuff that will be definitely included with the alpha release. We do have some of the Darksteel tools implemented. I'm not sure about the armor, but we do have a few Darksteel tools implemented already and some of their upgrades. We have the impulse hopper and the XP and item vacuums. We have the electromagnet and the soul vials implemented. We have the miscellaneous staffs. I think currently it's just levity, but travel staff is in the pipeline.
Yeah, travel staff is not too hard to do.
Yeah. And then we have
And
the
yes, there is an
enchanter.
upside down frog.
Yes. Somebody's named a dinner bone, I imagine. And then we have the powered lights. I'm not sure. It says or removed if not working. I think they're still in dev.
Yeah. So
But-
it is worth noting with a lot of these, especially the enchanter. We'll come back to this as we go through the Q&A portion, but we could use some help with recipes. Turns out there's a lot of enchantments, guys,
Yeah.
and a lot of materials. So when we kind of get to that, that's one of the biggest things that people can contribute, and they can contribute it with Jason, which is always great. So yeah,
Or even if you just bring us to be aware of, oh, this is missing, that is also monumentally helpful.
oh for sure. Cool.
Okay, so I guess we
Alrighty.
can dig into the Q&A then.
So, first question we have is, how are we doing? Most important question, ...
Yes.
How are we doing? How is everyone doing? Does everyone want to give a quick answer?
Yeah, doing pretty good, yeah.
Yep,
My
I'm doing
answer.
alright. Very, Agnor?
Yeah, same for me as well. Doing fine.
We lost Agnor. He doesn't have an opinion on it.
Agner does not have any feeling.
Oh no, I was waiting for a few minutes. What was going on? Sorry.
We just started the Q&A and the question has been, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm a bit exhausted, a bit tired, and I don't want to see conduit code anymore.
Understandable.
That does seem kind of reasonable. I respect that. Oh man, cool. All right. If you came back in time, what code of yours would you change? For me, this is a really easy one. Redstone conduits. I'd specifically change the filters on 112. I don't know if they got improved massively after I left, but conduits, redstone filters were a great concept that just was incredibly flawed in terms of how they actually worked. I very much was frustrated by how the gate system worked because I thought it was relatively cool and interesting and simple, but ultimately it turns out that redstone logic gates do not work super well as just a single item filter. And then on top of that, redstone with conduits was working in a very broken capacity as well. Any other favorites that you guys have, or shall we jump forward?
Well,
talk about
I
code
mean,
I would change. That's a big question.
of my code, I don't know. Of NIO 1.12 code, definitely the things object.
Oh yes, things is definitely at the top of that list.
Jesus
Oh,
Christ.
things. Oh gosh, I forgot about things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I joined the Ender.io team when we were just starting to think about 1.16, because they were too low on contributors at the time to begin. And I was like, Henry, could I please ask what things is, and can I please get rid of it? And the answer was no, because we don't know what it does anymore.
Yeah, Ender.io has had a complete rewrite for good reason, because
Very,
things
very good
was
reasons.
a monolithic nonsense. On the topic of various other, what's this? Will there be endless cop support for conduits? I might do that, but I don't think that that'll be in the main repo necessarily. It wouldn't be hard, but it also might not be necessary for reasons that are definitely off topic. Yeah. All right. In percentage, how much is the mod completed, and how much total time would you say has been put into working on the board?
Okay, well, in terms of how much percent the mod is completed, we can give a number anywhere between 0 and 99 inclusive. But more seriously, we've just gone over the criteria for releasing this alpha builds. So pretty much we've set out the expectations. We don't know when they're going to happen, but we have a list that we're slowly checking down.
And based on the time, like I've definitely put over 1,000 hours into this, and conduits alone above 200 hours at this point. So yeah,
I mean, in terms of time on my end, I don't have any.
I don't really want to know.
Yeah, no, I don't want to know either. I can't know. unfortunately. But I've been on the Enderio dev team now for probably the best part of 2 years, and we're still going. So lots and lots of time.
All right. What are your favorite Enderio features from previous versions? Mine is the Killer Joe and Zombie Generator and the farming station. I like the setups that use tools. I think it's a cool way to actually make machines use similar things to what the player uses. So anything that does that, happy.
Yeah, mine were stuff for traveling and just general like painted blocks because I don't know, they looked cool. I like the fences.
Cool. Alrighty, what changes in modded MC are you most excited to work with since the 1.12 era?
Wait,
Well,
so
Jason.
yeah,
Jason. No XML, no like custom stuff for recipes, no content required for stuff. It's a blessing.
I really am excited about Amethyst, but that's just because I like the purple.
That's fair. I love the noise. Like they've done a really good job in that
noise
sound
is so
design.
good.
And I'm really excited about all the new stuff in the game. So materials, the new biomes, you know, just the improvements to the Enderio lore. The Minecraft vanilla lore. Lots that we can play with inside of Enderio.
Barry?
Yeah, I'm excited about as well, like the scope, because I'd like a completely new block we can work with, and also like or we can try to spin around. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, Skulk will be really fun. Alright, what are some features that you are most excited to bring to modern versions of Minecraft? For me, it was the using tools and machines. They're just like that setup. Once again, I really love that you can have like your Tinker's Cleaver on your like Killer Joe and use that to achieve things. Why are we killing so many poor axolotls?
They aren't dead, I hope.
No, it's fine. They're moving back in.
They are moving and they can regen. So should be fine, I hope.
Alright, cool. 7. Do you plan to release alpha beta versions of Enderio early? Yes. Will you publish Enderio on Modern?
Yes, Enderio is already up on Modern. 1.19 will be joining the 1.12 files once they're ready, but you can already go over there and grab 1.12.
Yeah, awesome. What versions are going to be supported? 1.19 forwards. As you've seen, frogs are very important, so that is the reason, basically. And it will be 1.19.2 forward. We're not we're not doing targeting latest version at time of release.
We have a lot of dependencies on some of the new features in Forge, especially some of the things like, for example, the grindstone stuff we discussed earlier. We had to get something specially added to Forge, so you know, we've got to stay forward, unfortunately, to make the mod work.
Questions on all questions on conduit compat can be answered with the simple thing of if it's a capability, then it
yes.
should be easy enough. If it's not a capability, then
do it
like
yourself.
With significant pain, it could be.
If it's an interface,
right.
if it's an interface on the block entity, it's not going to happen. If it's something else, you can do it. Like redstone is not an interface on your block, but also like stuff you can access from the world, so it is doable, but not as easy.
Yeah. It would be on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Alright, what features do you feel function as a road marker for close to finished state of the mod once those features are completed? Or, in another way of saying it, what features of the mod do you expect to work on last? I reckon if you see us balancing stuff and adding recipes, it's a pretty good chance that we're getting close to a release. Those don't help during testing, but they do help for everyone else testing it. So we are unlikely to touch them really until we get close to actually releasing. When it comes to machines and stuff, though, as indicators, it was going to be conduits originally, but I mean, Agnor decided that they'd had enough of that. So I think the ones you'd see last entirely depend on what people who are helping out choose to pick up. we've had people pick up like the impulse hopper, which would not have been very high on my list. But yeah, like in terms of community assistance, will really define what machines last.
It's pretty much just on a case by case basis. You pick up what you think you can do it, move on to the next thing until everything's done.
What can non-coders do to help, and what level of coding knowledge, experience, or competence would be needed for one to learn to help with coding? Recipes are massive, given they're JSON now. It'll make things substantially easier to keep on top of like mod compat sort of recipes. I don't know all the enchantments in new versions. If you have enchanter recipes and are good at writing data packs, then that would obviously be super helpful. As for coding, I learned to code mods on the scale of Ender.io by working on Ender.io. So, I mean, I've been coding for a while before that, but at the same time, nothing on this scale. So in terms of learning it, you can totally learn as you go along, so long as you're willing to actually take in information, learn, and be corrected heavily. Henry spent a lot of time reviewing and correcting my code, so I would expect a similar experience for anyone doing it the first time as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been programming for many years, but in terms of Minecraft modding, again, I'd done little like utility mods, little ports, but Ender.io is definitely the biggest project I've ever touched. So again, everyone on this team has been a newbie at some point with Ender.io, so you're certainly not in any form of like alien environment, and we know what it's like, and we're more than happy to help out.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, same for me. I didn't even think I had a mod released point I started on Ender.io.
Oh,
like
nice.
I released my first mod like during Ender.io. So yeah, I did program a little bit, and I was working on a mod before it, but like actual release on CurseForce, my first mod happened while I was already working on my first.
All right, cool. So next question: what changes, improvements, or addition do you hope to make? Expect to make for the 1.19 version of the 1.12 compared to the vanilla changes? Will there be any major content or balance changes in the port?
Okay, so in terms of balance changes, balance is going to be completely turned on its head. As was mentioned earlier, for example, making the normal machines slightly weaker. But no accommodations currently have been made for balancing things because we're implementing everything first, and then we're worrying about balance during the alpha phase. So it's quite likely we'll make our first attempt at balance right before we distribute the alpha jars, and we'll take player feedback and our own play testing, take it like say on the test server, for example, and we'll see what needs to be changed. So that's going to be like a rolling effort. To try and both make it slightly fit in with the mod ecosystem, although that's pretty unlikely that we'll be able to completely, because there's so many tech mods, something can just generate 1 million FE and you're on the go. But we'll make an attempt to make it fit in well with the current ecosystem as far as obviously naturally possible. And we're also taking more lore inspiration from the game, such as the Skulk in the Deep Dark that we've talked about heavily. And for content changes, again, we've got the machine tiers where machines will have different kinds of traits depending on what they're made out of. I can have Squid explain further in a moment. But then we've also rebalanced the materials, so copper is used instead of iron in places where it makes sense, which means you're using less of your iron to do the same thing because copper is really plentiful anyway, so it's good to give it a use.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the machine tier system, we're kind of similar to what we already have. Hang on, let me put down two of the machines.
Yeah, go grab the document.
So like if you look at like the slice and splice next to the sag mill, both are made from slightly different chassis, indicating their kind of origin, and one is kind of more focused around the like soul magic necromancy portion of the mod, whilst the other is just a very industrial sort of machine. We want to lean into that more with the newer machines. So the goal will be that machines with materials from different dimensions and with different bases have different expected functions. So you expect when you're using like a slice and splice and a soul binder that it is to do with essentially soul magic, whereas what you expect when using a normal industrial machine is that it'll be to do with actually like traditional industrial processing. So the goal will be to add more things along those lines, like for example skulk machines that react when there's vibrations nearby and perhaps spawn a warden or something similar. or run off XP in some capacity. Like there's some ideas around improving the way machines can be more diverse and have more ways of interacting with the new mobs that have been added to the game specifically, given that a big portion of Ender.io comes down to the use of mobs. No, I don't know what we'll do with frogs yet, but I mean, agreed.
We'll make all the frogs make the machines emissive. There we go.
Yes, frogs make machines. Perfect.
If frogs eat an Enderman, they drop 1 grain of an infinity, and you need, I don't know, block to start with simple alloy
Perfect.
smelter.
You're right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Lordy.
Cool. Invite to that.
Okay.
Awesome.
Frogs work
Alright.
out.
Cool. Alright, how comprehensive or maybe expansive are your plans for Ender.io? Do you see this as an item towards energy conduit focus, or do you see the whole ecosystem of automation and machinery, or is it somewhere else in between?
Like it's always been a full ecosystem. Like it's never been just conduits. Like
Yeah.
people like the conduits, which is obvious, but like Ender.io has always been more than just conduits, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and we
I think-
have no real interest in, putting in X amount of effort to make an entire ecosystem for people to strip out conduits and just use them on their own, because that's not really their intended purpose anyway. They're balanced against the rest of our mod. So
I think it would be very interesting to focus even harder on the non-conduit parts of the mod in the new versions, mostly because I think on the previous ones it was a little demoralizing knowing that most people were just using it for the conduits. So if you have things that are blocking you from using the machines on account of them not being interesting or fun or being too hard to craft, then I want to hear that feedback so that we can make sure not have that be the case.
And a question for the painter requiring a glow ink sack. That's actually a really good idea. We haven't gotten that far yet. So try to note that down somewhere, because I think that does actually make a lot of sense.
Yeah, does a bit. Alright, will there be XML recipes in the new version? And if not, will machines be configurable? Great news, everyone. XML recipes are gone, and machines are configurable. Data packs will still work with all machines, so that's all good. As for the XML configuration for things like capacitors and grinding balls I believe are recipe based, so they should also be JSON. We will have a look at the capacitor config another time, but
Yeah.
for reasons that I'm sure Rover will get into in the more technical part of the stream, capacitors have changed a fair bit. Will you be able to brew potions in the vat? I could already do this through custom recipes. That's pretty smart, frankly. Probably not in the first release. My thought was it is quite likely that we could do like compat for another mod that adds potions, but at some point in the future we can revisit and work out if we want to do that. Definitely not for your first release though.
Yeah.
16. Will the Soul Vial stuff traveling in Ender.io return?
Okay, yes, so in terms of bringing new old features in, we do aim to bring in every feature where technically possible from 1.12 into the rewrite at some point during the development cycle. Not everything's going to return at the same time, as we've discussed before, but we are making the effort to bring everything back in some sense. So, for example, the Soul Vial has already returned. Staff of Traveling is in the works. However, things like the Ender.io may not technically be possible. We're passionate about investigating whether or not they can be done, but there are reasons why certain things disappeared, and there are reasons why we may not be able to bring them back.
Yeah. Cool. Will you bring back the storage system, and how will you handle it? Yeah, so inventory panel is always a contentious one. I think 1.12 basically failed the inventory panel in terms of how it worked, because the original inventory panel upgraded your existing item conduits to be aware of what was in their inventories and allow you to interact with them. The newer inventory panel used the data cable on 1.12, which meant that you basically just had a bad version of RS or AE2. I'd rather pour all of the effort that is available for inventory panel into adding a conduit for RS or AE2, because then we're supporting a system that is just genuinely more interesting and more expansive than we would be able to otherwise. That being said, if something same as 1.12, if someone else wants to take up the inventory panel as their die-hard cause, they are welcome to. But I would say, based on what I have seen of the download numbers on CurseForge, the inventory panel is not the most loved portion of Ender.io.
I guess
That being said, I'd love to look into early game storage upgrades in Ender.io. Like warehouses that you can access without having to like install a huge interconnected networking system. The caveat of that being not anytime soon.
I guess 18 and 19 can be merged together because they basically ask a similar thing. Will we be bringing back the dimensional transceiver or the farming station? Yes, everything from 1.12 will be returning at some point. I know the dimensional transceiver, I think we're going to adapt to work on the graphing system like the conduits do, I believe. So they could be getting some kind of overhaul functionally. And yes, farming station will definitely be making a return.
So my dream would be, depending on how feasible it is, there is theoretically the possibility that the dimensional transceiver can function as both a cross-dimension like tool for transferring power and items and stuff, and as a tool for expanding conduit networks wirelessly. In terms of still being able to maintain all of the data about conduits, given the way the graph works now. The caveat, obviously, is implementation, but the goal is dimensional transceiver returns, just perhaps better than before.
We've had an interesting question in the chat there. Besides conduits, what are we dreading adding code-wise?
Capacitor banks.
Yeah, capacitor banks are the next challenge.
Capacitor banks are just conduits in big.
Yeah.
Like they connect, they build up a network, and they have a shared I/O. So yeah, it's essentially energy conduits in big.
Yeah.
With more rendering.
I don't think there's much dreaded beyond that. I think it's more just it's a lot of hours to implement features like this at that point. So all the machines, while we have after many rewrites and annoying lots and lots of people with breaking their pull requests, I have managed to rewrite the machines into a somewhat reusable state now. However, that being said, while we do have a generic system, we still have to spend a lot of time to implement stuff with the system. So it's not a case of we can hash out every machine in the next couple of days, but you're looking at probably a good few hours per machine just to get the functionality. And then again, like we were talking about before, then recipes are a whole other issue. Because we had thousands upon thousands of recipes in those XML files that we're slowly and surely rewriting in data generators.
Yeah. There are questions about Easter eggs returning. They're secrets. That's the truth. That's all there is to it. Alright, how are we going to handle Darksteel armor tools and the Ender Sword? Same or different? As mentioned before, smithing table instead of the anvil. We will look at more upgrades and more modularity. Something that was spoken about on 1.12 specifically was kind of splitting it out source code wise into its own portion of the mod, so we can kind of give it more focus and attention. So that will definitely be part of how we're thinking about it. I'd love to do all sorts of cool extra things, fading into the next question of what other weapons and tools will you be adding. I love drills, I love power armors, I love that style of cool late game stuff. Is that going to make it into Ender.io? Perhaps. But it is certainly distant stretch goal, and the main thing my focus would be on is more upgrades and modifications into gear.
Also about the Ender.io upgrades. Right now you can just take them out of your swords and put them back in and without any costs. That's probably also going to change that. If you actually put an upgrade into a weapon or a tool, you're not just going to get it back for free. Because right now it's just, you just loot a couple of places and you've got like all the upgrades you ever need.
Yeah, so they're one way now.
Does the smithing table currently use XP when we do that?
No, what we do instead is you build the upgrade and then you have to right click it with enough XP to activate it, and then you can perform the recipe. I think Crazy implemented that already. I can probably take that out and demonstrate. So you can see on the screen we've got the empowered upgrades and stuff like that. We've got an enabled one, but you can see this one costs 12 levels. And if I take it and right-click it, then it's activated, and then I could take the axe and a smithing table, put that down, and put the two together. However, right now, the smithing table recipes are quite finished.
Yeah. Principle is there.
Yeah.
Cool. Final question. Conduits will likely come last because of their complications, but do you plan on making facades and laser IO Dial 20 compatibility?
Yeah, to that, we've all agreed that we would do conduits last because they were so big, and yeah, here we are. Well,
yeah, Agno did not take that advice.
No.
Well, I've said we should do them last, but like one day it was like, I really want to start with them, and yeah. To the facade, I've talked with the Applied Energistics staff, and we have agreed that we want to make facades and make them interchangeable. So if you want to right-click with NIO facades on Applied Energistics, you can use them, and you can right-click with Applied Energistics facades on conduits, and they will work as well. And 1.12 facades were like just a full block, and I want to implement them in a way that you can have facades for separate sites, so that you have a little bit more of decoratability with them.
The question,
So-
is it an XP cost or a levels cost? It's a level cost. That might be something that needs to be cleared up in terms of meshing if the tooltip says XP.
Yeah, no, you're right. As for laser IO compat, I know Dyer is keen in theory. The question will be obviously how hard it is to do in practice. And also how keen both parties are, because I think if it was just us implementing it, we would be less keen. So we'll have to see how we go. And that's all the questions we have from the doc.
Okay, we've had somebody say look into the auto smithing table mod. Not quite sure how that works, but if they use the normal smithing table stuff, then I'm sure it'll work, but we can definitely look into how it works. We've got a question about facades as well for you, Agner. I assume you get 6 times the facades then when crafting.
They are data packable, so if not, you can just fix them yourself, but I suppose so, yeah. But it's not yet implemented, so I can't say yes or no, but I will want to do them.
That's probably something that will come up during the balancing phase of the alphas. Or whenever the boosters are released, obviously that'll come
But
up.
also
during
facades,
balance.
like, what are facades to balance? You have them and they are for decoration, they are not like doing anything, except like look good.
Do we have a roadmap? Yes, we do. I can actually bring that on screen if you give me a couple of minutes to find the browser. GitHub. So in theory, wish us luck, we should be able to bring Chrome on the screen. Okay, so that should be our GitHub on the screen here. So we're Sleepy Trousers over on GitHub, and we do have an Ender.io project board. So you can focus on... Oh, I see Melanex has linked it there, thank you very much. So we do have a list of everything that we're currently working on, what the kind of state is, and it gives you an idea of what we're currently working. So if we go on to the board, for example, you'll see what state everything is in, what's been done, what we're currently working on, things like that. So you can keep up to date on that. Or alternatively, you can also be in the Ender.io Discord server, and you'll be able to see the GitHub channel and see what kind of things are currently actively being worked on too.
Cool. So I think that's all the questions. So did you want to do
I think so.
any technical deep dive, Rover?
We can take a deep dive into the conduits if we'd like to go and do that. I don't know if there's anything else we need to technically dive into. Agnew, do you have any suggestions, or is it just capacitors to give a better example on how they work under the hood?
I'm not entirely sure what to show in conduits because, like, you're streaming and I don't know, I don't want to tell you where to go all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you could.
I mean, you could screen share it in Discord and I could crop it in.
Oh no, my internet isn't.
Oh, right, that's right.
Yeah, that's fine. We might save conduits for
let's go.
another time then.
Well,
That's
sure,
probably
the
fine.
API, it's going to change anyways. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Nothing's finalized.
Okay, so I
Yeah,
guess we can
but
take a deep dive into the.
I think on average we write everything like 5 times before we're satisfied with it.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna put IntelliJ on the screen. I'm gonna work out how to zoom in. You guys don't have to see that side anyway, but we'll start with the kind of a capacitor. So capacitors will now have. How do I zoom? Is it Control Alt Dot Control? Why do they not make this easy anymore? View. Increase font size. Alt Shift Dot. Right, there we go. So capacitors will now only have modifiers for a class of value now. So instead of having, okay, we'll make the alloy smelter faster or the alloy smelter hold more energy by the old capacitor key system, which basically meant every single possible thing to do with energy or anything is controlled by a capacitor key, which was stored in XML, and it discussed how it would scale based on the level stored in your capacitor. So that would have things like your mathematical algorithm and things like that. That was really, really gross. And basically it meant that we had to register everything as a capacitor. And I'm pretty sure even the tools used capacitors under the hood, which was very, very confusing.
Nightmare.
So what we've got done instead is a capacitor now has a modifier type. So a value can be something of an energy capacity, energy use, energy transfer. There can be more added. So we've had discussions about maybe having range for things like the farmer. So it can have a capacity that will be good for capacity use, transfer, range, stuff like that. And you'll have that show up in your tooltip. It'll have range modifier 3, for example. So rather than doing specific machines or specific things, there's just a set number of classes that can be modified by a loop capacitor. And then in terms of configurability, the values for all these modifiers, if they are to be exposed in config, will now be done just through the Forge config system. So you'll be able to edit your Ender.io toml file or use your GUI if you've got configurable, I think it's called, installed. But as far as the algorithms go, we now have a fixed linear and quadratic scaler that we use built in, and that can't be changed by config anymore. But to be completely fair, I don't think it makes sense to have that configurable because that's a really, really niche topic. But that would leave a lot of unpredictability on the mod author's side because they'd have to understand all the algorithms and see how they all play with each other. So I feel like in that sense as well, it's safer balance-wise to restrict the scalability and how it is scaled to in code itself. So basically, under the hood now, summary, there's only a certain number of modifiers that can be applied. The scalars that are used with those modifiers are fixed in the code now, so you can't change them. And it just means as a player, you can now know exactly what you expect of whatever capacitor and what it will do. And as a mod pack author, you will still have access to control the base values of everything, but you won't be able to control the scalability anymore. I think that kind of covers things, and for anyone interested, they're pretty simple and pretty expandable as well for people who are writing add-ons. So you can use this API package and just add things on or use capacitors in your add-on as well. So it's very open, and basically anything can use these capacitors now. And as far as the loop capacitors go, loop capacitor data, these literally just store a list of modifiers. So again, it's just a number that gets passed into the scalar, and we have plans to have different types of them as discussed earlier. But for mod packs, we eventually want to have the ability for mod pack authors to designate a new item that they add, say through like Cube.js or something, and give it certain modifiers or certain base values. So that's something that we also want to do in the future, which just gives people the option to say, okay, I've got, say, the Aldermod star in Aldermod 7 or 8. You could say, okay, I want this to be a capacitor with a base value of 5 because it's a creative mode item. They could do that with a single JSON file in their data pack. A question about an upgradable capacitor or a system to learn more about capacitors to upgrade them or improve them in certain areas. For example, if you put it in an alloy smelter, it'll teach you about A, B, and C, and it'll give you those values depending on what you put it in. So I guess you mean like discovering what the capacitor does through use rather than just being told immediately? Or do
I
you
Could
think
also
something
be
they're
that you
talking-
upgrade it over time.
I think they're talking more about like an upgrading system. Like, you have one that learns and expands as you move on.
Okay, so say you had a base value of 2, it goes up by a tiny bit every like X cycles, so you can improve it up to
Yeah.
max.
Yeah.
Okay, that's definitely not something we've discussed, but it's an interesting concept. I think if you drop that in the suggestions channel, we can definitely take more of a look into that. But I think Squid can talk more on whether or not that would actually fit faithfully into our plans. Something really well
Yeah,
versed
I
in
mean-
the capacitor plan.
My main thought with the way capacitors are being set up for new versions and stuff is I want to avoid adding too many layers of complexity to how you upgrade your machines. Like, I think even with energy, you end up in a specific position fairly quickly where there's like now 10 kinds of capacitor to put in your machine. And to upgrade all your machines requires walking past all of them and right clicking all of them. If you have some kind of self-learning capacitor or whatever it is that improves itself over time, you end up back at the loop capacitor problem of how do I make all of my machines consistent? How do I make sure all of them are working at the same rate? And how do I not just have like a million upgrade paths to take? And also, how would you make the most difficult capacitor to upgrade the same capacitor that isn't just used for everything? I think it just adds potentially unnecessary complexity. That being said, that's what energy is for. So none of these ideas ever go out the window. They just usually go to energy when they're not necessarily something that makes the most sense overall.
And we had a question about the decoration machines returning. I actually never understood what the decoration machines were for in the original 1.12, so I guess maybe Squid would be best first and again to talk about that.
I mean, look, yeah, they were there for like painting blocks and for like making literally decorations for using the machines. If there's a lot of demand for it, I suppose it's not a hard thing to add because it's essentially take the texture, put it on 6 sides of a block, done.
Yeah. It's just a case of, are people going to use it?
Yeah. I think the decorative chassis, the decorative like base of a machine, etc. I'd be down for making sure they exist. Oh my gosh.
Jesus.
You just teleported the item frames.
You teleported the item frame? Oh, they must be entities because they were transparent.
No, they are always entities.
They're
well,
always
yeah.
entities.
That means you can teleport them though, that's nuts.
I've
Oh,
made
hey,
them
Henry.
invisible. That was effort.
Yeah, that is Henry. They were painting machines with their non... Oh, I see, right. So you can make them flat machines. I get you now.
Yeah. I get the appeal. I'm not like we might do so. But it's certainly a lot like an amount of effort for a relatively low use feature. Yeah. There's no real harm in it, so I don't see a reason why not to in one sense, but it is extra effort.
It's not going to be a priority, but I feel like Agner's going to get bored and add it one day.
Hell, that's insulting. Well, but it's like
The frogs can jump really high. I didn't realize how high they could actually jump.
They can jump a stupidly high distance.
Give them a jump boost and watch them really go.
Oh boy. Give Acme like frog. Oh, only players may be affected by this command. I need to get pushed now.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Yeah.
Oh my days.
Oh, they actually take fall damage after
Yeah,
jumping
they
because of
do.
it.
Oh my. Well, that just flew. What did you do there, Tyler?
They're just going into orbit.
Oh, but
We might not see those frogs again.
Are there? Oh, I missed that question. Sorry, Lightning. We're going to be adding a guidebook to the game, which I think is going to be, I think, not soon, but as part of the release, and that will basically take you over all the recipes, all of the how-tos and whatnots. I think, what was it? What mod were we similar to in plan for that? I think it's close to like the Britannia plan, I guess. Like similar to that kind of guidebook, but it's the patchouli kind of thing from Vazkey that we'll be using. So
Yeah, and we're using patchouli because it's simple. I know it's not perfect, but at the end of the day, yeah, VT will work with patchouli to do it, and it's I think the accessibility of it is enough that you can use it in game to understand how the mod works, but not so much that we have to spend like 20 years to make it work.
In response to the big mod packs or stuff like that, that is up to mod pack creators to decide.
Yeah.
We'd be
Once
very
it's ready,
happy,
it will go on Forgecraft.
Yeah, when it's ready, it will hit Forgecraft. But for other mod packs, that's up to obviously the mod pack developer to decide. We'd be very happy for them to have it, but I think we're a little bit far away from saying, "Hey, we're stable, please use us."
Yeah, exactly. Just a little bit.
And yes, patchouli will be an optional dependency. That's not going to be required.
Or maybe it'll be jar and jarred.
I don't think it has to be. I mean, we could, but it forces people to have it, and I don't think that there's much merit in doing so.
Yeah. Look, there's still always the conversation in my mind around like players downloading the mod, finding the guidebook doesn't exist, and not realizing they needed patchouli. But that's not really our problem.
No, I think we can just try and structure our CurseForge page to say, "Hey, remember this."
Yeah, but people don't read the CurseForge page.
As I'm here, I can confirm it'll be in all the mods when it's out. That's very cool.
Yeah.
You could also add a tooltip on the item if patchouli is not installed to tell people to install patchouli.
I suppose that's fair. In terms of like, if there, instead of a book or something, there was an ender pearl of knowledge or something similar. I have a few things in the works outside of this that are to do with different kinds of guides. They're not going to be ready anytime soon.
Export the guidebook to a web page and make an item that just shows a clickable link. That's a cool suggestion for if the mod's missing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the guidebook should be exportable to a web page because it's patchouli anyway.
Yeah, so we can just
I'm very excited to see you again, Henry. It's been a long time.
Oh, yeah.
I hope you're doing well, my man.
There used to be Enderio stuff in Draconics Project Intelligence 2. I think when I joined the team, there was possible plans to bring Project Intelligence up, but I think we didn't end up deciding that patchouli was just kind of there and ready to use.
Yeah, it's problem with patchouli stuff is you need or any kind of guidebook is you need someone to maintain it because it's a lot of stuff.
I mean, we've made an effort to use, if we have taken a library, we've made an effort to either A, have it to be a completely optional component, so take patchouli or connected textures and stuff like that, you don't need to have them. However, for things like conduits and stuff, I think we're using the GraphLib by GigaHertz.
Yeah, we are using that.
That's an okay. I'm justifying this like dependency wise. That's a good dependency to have because there are multiple mods that utilize it. So if there was an issue or something needed to be maintained, we both have GigaHertz and their mods and Enderio now and our mods.
And also, it's not related to Minecraft, so it doesn't have to update.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a low risk dependency. It just means that when it comes to updating, the only things we really need to wait for, which is very low maintenance as of itself, is things like registrating things, which are just utility mods that we use. I think Tetrag maintains Registrate still. So exactly. we do have
it's
like
used by Create for reference.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not exactly under maintained.
Are we going to include a developer resource pack? Very good question.
I see no reason why we can't.
Yeah, my thought is honestly, if the models have changed, that would be the issue.
But
for like items and stuff.
But remember, we can just include the original resource pack, as a whole. We just have to rename all the references and stuff, which would be the problem because we've changed a lot of items, and some items are just not going to exist anymore.
Awesome. I think that's about it though for the stream. I don't know if there's anything else we really have to add.
I don't think we have much more to show at this time.
Yeah.
I will share in the Enderio Discord and in the comments on the Reddit post probably a link to the VOD on YouTube, because obviously Twitch doesn't keep them for long enough. So we will have a VOD published up as soon as that's available, that people can refer back to, and hopefully sometime we'll find the time to edit it down as well, so it's a bit more manageable for those who couldn't watch the whole stream.
Awesome. Well, thanks all.
Right.
That was a good time.
Thank you very much. It's good to see everyone here. Really glad to finally be showing some of the work that we've been doing to everyone.
Yep. And glad to see you as always, Henry.
Yes.
All right. Bye,
Very
I
well.
guess.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you sometime, maybe. See you guys.